where the Eagles are and kind of what Saquon Barkley's added to that team and how real a threat they are. And it's just interesting to think back to where we were earlier in the year. I had mentioned a few different times, like how strange it was that Nick Sirianni is on the hot seat. And not because like the Eagles don't do things the right way. They do. They generally have. Jeffrey Lurie is one of the best owners in the sport. Howie Roseman's built a great roster, but just the environment there is different than anywhere else. And there aren't too many other franchises where a coach would go through 3 years where he'd make the playoffs all 3 years after inheriting a 4-win team and make a Super Bowl and would go into year 4 on the hot seat. But that's where Sirianni was. It didn't look great after the first 2 weeks of the year. They were still figuring things out with 2 new coordinators and Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio on offense and defense, respectively. And then they hit the pause button in week 4. They're able to regroup a little bit. And, one thing that Sirianni wanted all his players and coaches to do was really reflect on everything that had gone right and everything that had gone wrong over the first 4 weeks of the season. And they've come in, I think they've come back a team that's, I think, more cohesive, better within their schemes. And obviously they haven't lost since. And a huge, huge, huge part of that is how the identity on offense has really kind of loaded up behind the run game, where when Jalen Hurts went back and reflected on some of the things that he and Kellen Moore could do better, and Kellen was a part of that conversation, of course, as well. They wanted to lean into what Saquon Barkley was bringing to the table, because Saquon Barkley was their best player through 4 weeks. And so they leaned into the play action game a little bit more. Now, at the time, they were dealing with receiver injuries. They've gotten healthier at that spot, but it's still the identity of who they are. And Saquon's been such an incredible, incredible, incredible acquisition for them. And I think that there's a real lesson in the acquisition of Saquon Barkley that other teams can take from it, which is that the Eagles have a philosophy, have a foundation, but that does not mean that they aren't flexible. Now, they hadn't invested in the running back position really since paying DeMarco Murray, which followed paying, Shady McCoy, which followed paying Brian Westbrook. So it's not they haven't invested in running backs before, but there was a period there where they didn't see it as a great investment to go and pay a running back. And so they saw it as one of those positions that you could churn, that was fungible, where you could find guys to play that would be Super Bowl that would be suitable. They won a Super Bowl that way. They went to another Super Bowl with that formula. But over time, their flexibility and philosophy allowed for them to examine the market, look at it, and say, you know what, running backs have been devalued to the point where the very best running backs, the top 4 or 5 guys, like the guys who are truly unicorns, have actually now become good value. It's something that the Niners took advantage of a couple of years ago in acquiring Christian McCaffrey. And it's something certainly that the Eagles have taken advantage of in looking at and then signing Saquon Barkley in free agency. Their philosophy of it with it was, well, wait a second, what is the price? The price is what Atlanta's paying for Darnell Mooney, is a guy who touches the ball 300 times a year, and a guy who can affect the passing game and the running game, and a guy who's 230 pounds and run between the tackles, but can line up in the slot and run a route like a receiver can. Is that guy more valuable than a second or third receiver? Again, no offense to anybody that might be the example here. Darnell Mooney's the one that I mentioned. Um, of course, that guy's more valuable. Of course, Saquon Barkley is more valuable. And so it winds up being a really good fit. Saquon Barkley is playing behind by far the best offensive line he's ever played behind. He's already got a career high in yardage. He's beaten his career high by 80 yards with 6 games to go. He's got a shot at Eric Dickerson's single season rushing record. He's got a shot at Chris Johnson's single season scrimmage yards record. It really is remarkable. And he is part of the reason why the Eagles are so dangerous going forward. You can go over a million reasons why. They've gotten younger in the secondary, right? Like they with Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell along the lines of scrimmage, their investment has paid off in their ability to replace Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox. The coordinator hires now have worked out, and having Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio in. And I, as I see it right now, they would line up as the top contender to the Lions in the NFC.